Well, we're going to continue on. I'm going to try to motor through these notes this morning, but we're in part 3 of a series we've been doing called Unshakable, and basically this is about developing our faith to a point to where it becomes unshakable, that we are so confident in what we believe in and why we believe it. And it's all about having conviction in a culture of compromise. Our culture today just seems absolutely chock full of compromise anymore. But these stories that we're talking about all happen to come from the book of Daniel. And so last week we talked about a very famous Bible story, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and the fiery furnace. Some of you probably know that one from Sunday school. And those 3 men literally stood firm in the face of certain death and kept their faith in God. And this morning is another very famous story about Daniel himself this time. And you'll probably remember this one from Sunday school as well, because it involves some lions. You know what I'm talking about, Daniel in the lion's den, right? A first grader stood in front of his classroom to make a speech about what he wanted to be when he grew up. And so he stood in the front of his class and he said, "I'm going to be a lion tamer and have lots of fierce lions. I'll walk into the cage and they'll roar and they'll roar and they'll..." And he paused. And it suddenly occurred to him what he was saying. And he said, "But of course I'll have my mommy with me." Now, why did he decide suddenly that he wanted his mommy with him? Well, because being surrounded by fierce roaring lions is pretty scary, right? That's downright dangerous. Back in 1898, this is a long time ago. This is before Sherman, all right? I had to get you, Sherman. I'm sorry. Anyhow, back in 1898, 2 male lions stalked a railroad construction crew in Uganda and were believed to have killed about 135 victims. In 1932, there was a pride of lions that went on a killing spree that left 1,500 men, women, and children dead. Just last month, several animal poachers became prey themselves after being mauled to death by lions as they were trespassing in a South African game reserve. That was according to abcnews.com. I just read that one just recently. Lions are dangerous. They are dangerous critters. Now, lions don't normally kill people, but if there's nothing else to eat, they will eat you. In Babylon, the king apparently kept a few lions around to do just that. And if someone angered him, the offending party became the main course on the lion's menu that day. Kids usually love this story because, I mean, it has action, it has drama, it has suspense, and an amazing resolution, all the ingredients that really make up just a great story. And I love telling this story, especially to kids, because, boy, you can get all animated and stuff. Now, that lion was big, and he was hungry. You know, you can embellish a little bit and have some fun with the story. And so I will do that a little bit this morning just because I like to have fun at church. And so, but one of the challenges of this story is, a lot of times we read it in a sort of a kid version. You know, we see Daniel as this handsome, strapping young man, you know, and then there's these lions, but they look almost like kittens, and they kind of cuddle up to him, you know, and and he uses them as a pillow, and the reality was that it's probably nothing like that at all. Okay, and so let's dig into this story a little bit this morning, find some context and stuff like that. And so Daniel chapter 6 verse 1 says, "It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom." And I stop right there because it's like, whoa, wait, who's Darius? Where'd this clown come from? Who is this guy? Well, the king we've been talking about for the past several weeks has been Nebuchadnezzar, which is just one of the greatest Bible names ever. Well, in Daniel chapter 6, Daniel is around 80 years old. 80. All right, so he's getting up there. He's getting up there around Sherman. And so he's serving under... I'm sorry, Sherman. That's 2 pokes this morning I've gotten you. I'm sorry. And so Daniel is serving under his third king at this point. We had Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar was followed by Belshazzar, which is another just great name. And then there's Darius. We've actually skipped over Belshazzar, but there's another awesome story about some stuff happened while he was king, where we get the phrase, the writing on the wall. That's in chapter 5 of the book of Daniel, but that's another conversation for another time. But what's interesting about King Darius is that history records him as an administrative genius, unlike me. All right? In fact, as soon as he started ruling his kingdom, he basically came in and just reorganized everything. And he set up 120, they're called satraps in the Bible. Basically, that's a fun word that kind of means kingdom protector. Okay? And so Daniel 6, go back, there we go. Daniel 6:2 says, with 3 administrators over them, over those 120, one of those administrators whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. So he put 3 administrators over the 120, and Daniel was one of those 3. Their job would be to protect against rebellion, to levy taxes, and to guard the financial affairs of the nation. Some translators call these administrators, some call them governors. Okay, now moving on to verse 3. Is this thing going to work today? My goodness, I should have maybe put a new battery in it or whatever. There we go. Now, Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. This is pretty typical of Daniel's life. We always see him standing out. Okay? He's always the best. He's always going the extra mile, so to speak. And this newest king, Darius, sees Daniel and essentially just says, man, this guy's so good at everything, I'm going to put him second in command. All right, he's going to answer only to me. Like this guy, he's got his stuff together. And it's amazing. And again, like most of these situations in the Bible, everything looks great and hunky-dory, but there are problems that are coming along with this. A famous scholar once said, mo money, mo problems. And that's sort of how this is going to go for Daniel in this situation. Now, think about this. In this story, Daniel's an old guy. Okay, he's probably right around 80, maybe late 70s. He's well respected, highly honored by the king, but he's no spring chicken anymore. And so his enemies believe that, it's just some old doddering fool here, and we're gonna take him down because we want to be in that awesome spot in the kingdom, And they're jealous of the respect that he has in the king's court. And so they assume, just like we assume, anybody in government has to be dirty. Right? I mean, there's got to be something going on, Mr. Mayor, right? I mean, I'm just teasing. I'm teasing. All right, so they go digging for dirt. But they look and there's nothing. Daniel is squeaky clean. There's no sexual immorality. There's no embezzling of funds. There's no betrayal. There's no palace intrigue. There's nothing. So boring. You can't touch this guy. He's honest. He's blameless. Untouchable. And so Daniel 6:4, hit a down arrow on there for me, guys. There you go. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Wow. So they're going after him. And through the story, we're going to find some truths that will help our faith become unshakable and help us to stand strong in the face of trials. And the first truth I want to tell you this morning is this. When God lifts you up, expect someone to try to pull you back down. I don't know how this might come true in your life, but let's say, you receive a promotion. A lot of times, the people that you think would be the most excited for you are the most jealous or the most critical of you. Or maybe some of you, you're getting really excited about your faith in Jesus, and other people start to make fun of you. And there may be even some Christians who are like, well, one day you're going to settle down and be a miserable Christian just like me. You can't be that excited. Well, why not? We can get excited about Jesus. It's like what some have called crab syndrome. I looked this up on the internet. It's hilarious. Apparently, when you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, one brave crab will decide to try to just get out. He's like, I'm out of here, man. I am king crab. I'm getting out of this place. I'm not going to be in this bucket. And what happens when that one brave crab soul tries to climb its way out of that bucket, the other crabs will grab hold of him and pull him back down as if to say, if we ain't getting out, ain't nobody getting out. And they do this. They're like, you're getting cooked with the rest of us, pal. And so these other administrators, they have crab syndrome. They're trying to dig up dirt on Daniel. They're trying to drag him back down, but they can't. And then in verse 5, it says this. Boy, this thing just ain't working today. Oh well, technical difficulties. It's all good. You guys are just going to have to follow me this morning, all right? I'm going to turn it off. Okay. Finally, these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God. That's his Achilles heel. That's where we're going to get him. He's unswervingly religious. That's his weakness. And many people over the years have thought that faith in God, they've thought of that as weakness. And they've been proven wrong time and time again. It's not faith in God that makes us weak. It's faith in God that makes us strong. I read an article by someone that claimed that Stonewall Jackson was a flawed Civil War general. I don't know if you guys know anything about Stonewall Jackson, but he was not what people would consider as weak. It's claimed that one of Jackson's weaknesses as a general was his faith in Christ. Someone else noted that Jackson neither smoked, drank, nor played cards, and sometimes refused to march or fight on Sundays. The article argued that a great general would never shy from a fight on Sundays. Any general worth his salt would have fought on whatever day they had to win. And so in that author's opinion, refusing to march or fight on Sunday was a major drawback. But I was thinking, I thought to myself, for a flawed general, Stonewall Jackson certainly scared the wits out of many soldiers on the Union side. And he won just about every fight that he entered into. I even read one conflict where Stonewall Jackson took on 3 separate Union armies totaling 64,000 men and beat them all. And he had around, they say approximately 14,000, 15,000 men with him. And he took on 64,001. I'm pretty sure Jackson's faith was not a weakness. Maybe that's why God told Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:19, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. You see, Daniel is standing out, and his faith in God is why he stands out. And sure enough, there's opposition, as some of you may be experiencing even now. The other 2 administrators are like, we got to stop this guy. We got to knock him down a peg or 2. And so what do? Well, they decide to go butter up the king a little bit. Daniel chapter 6, verse 6 says, so these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, may King Darius live forever. I'll stop there for a second. Oh, king, you look amazing today. Have you been working out? Is that a new crown? No, well, I must say that crown looks wonderful on your head, O king. Did you get a haircut? You look great. Is that a new robe? And they continue with this starting in verse 7. It says, the royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Verse 8, now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which, by the way, are running the Babylonian Empire at this point. It's not the Babylonian Empire anymore, it's the Persian Empire, just FYI, which cannot be repealed. Verse 9, so King Darius put the decree in writing. Now, this decree would create an immediate problem for our boy Daniel, our man Daniel, right? Why? Well, because Daniel was a prayer warrior. Okay? He was a praying man. Okay? You know the kind of person that I'm talking about, a prayer warrior. You know what I'm talking about, right? You know, that person that you contact when you need prayer because you know for a fact that they're going to hit the carpet. They're going to hit their prayer closet or whatever, wherever it is they go, and they're going to pray. You know, you just have those people in your life that, boy, something goes down, you're like, boy, I got to call so-and-so. When Joey and I lived in Hamilton, it was this woman by the name of Becky Carpenter. You knew Becky would pray. You know, everybody will be like, oh yeah, I'll pray for you. Yeah, I'll pray for you. But like, you know, if you had something serious going down, you call Becky. Because you're like, Becky will pray. And she'll probably pray for you and knock you off your feet. Like, she was crazy. It was awesome. But we know that Daniel prayed because of this verse here in verse 10. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room with the windows open toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he had done before. So he's facing this decree. And this decree means death. Okay, if you pray to anybody else but Darius, which, anyway, if you prayed to anyone but Darius, you were getting tossed into the lion's den. And we talked about how lions were ferocious, yes? And so what does he do? He prays. Not to Darius, but to God. His faith in God is indeed unshakable. Because, listen, he could have just stopped praying. It's just a month, right? It's 30 days. He could have said, okay, God, look, I'm 80 years old. I'm going to do more good still alive than as lion food, right? So I'll talk to you in like 30 days. We'll be okay, right? Or he could have just, you know, he could have prayed in hiding. He could have closed his window, you know, and maybe he could have done one of those silent prayers where you're just like, and somebody comes in and they're like, you awake? Yep. What are you doing? Praying. I don't hear anything. Are you? Oh, I'm praying in here, man. Oh. I mean, he could have done that, right? Because God knows your thoughts. He hears that stuff, right? But he went to his prayer room. He prayed like he normally prayed. He got down on his knees and he prayed to God. This is where we come to our second truth for today. The first truth was when God lifts you up, expect someone to pull you back down. The second is this: prayer will give you strength. It will give you strength. There are many times we go through tough stuff and we'll say this, and I'm guilty of this one as well. All we can do now is pray. That sounds like prayer is the last resort, doesn't it? We've done all the stuff that we can do, I guess. Well, we can pray. It's like we've tried to force the situation to go our way and failed, so now I guess I can pray. No! Prayer should be the first thing that we do. We should follow Daniel's example in this situation. He's facing absolute death. And what does he do? He doesn't freak out. He doesn't break into a panic. Ah! He prays. What incredible faith. The thing is, we can pray. We get the opportunity to pray. We can take our issues before the Almighty, the Creator of all of this, the throne of God, and He actually hears us. So it's not that, well, I guess we'll pray. No, we can pray. We get the opportunity to pray. It's amazing. Now, there's another thing about Daniel that I want us to notice here this morning. He doesn't make a public spectacle of this. He doesn't, just like in chapter 1 we talked about, he didn't shout out, I'm not eating this food. You know, he just said, hey, I have an issue with this. Let's work something out. He went to leadership and he tried to work something out. Daniel, he was like, he just quietly went about his normal routine of praying. He didn't frolic around. I'm praying to God, everyone, just so you all know. Look at me, look at me. I'm praying to the only God. You all can get out of here with this prayer to Darius stuff. I'm praying to God. He didn't do any of that. He just continued his regular routine. He made an unshakable decision in his life. I'm going to pray to God 3 times a day. It was his already established relationship with God that gave him the strength to continue. That prayer that he was already in the practice of praying. Previous prayers were giving him the strength to go on. Listen, when something in life comes and knocks you down, you simply seek God in prayer. If it knocks you down, maybe you need to stay down and kneel and pray and submit yourself to the Master. When life gives you more than you can stand, you kneel before Him in prayer and He will give you the strength to stand. Quote, anonymous. I don't know who said it, but they were right. The next part of the story has these governors catching Daniel in prayer and then going before the king and like a child tattling. They tattle, King, Daniel's praying to God and not to you. And so let's skip down to verse 13 there. It says, Then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. And when the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. So he's still praying. You had this unbreakable rule about prayer for the next 30 days. And I find verse 14 fascinating, super interesting. The king didn't want this to happen to Daniel. He knew that Daniel had great value to him. But he also had no choice. This law was written and decreed. And so according to the Persian law, this had to be punished. And so verse 15, Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict the king issues can be changed. Verse 16, So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. And the king said to Daniel, May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. Verse 17, A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Verse 18, Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. So King Darius is devastated, right? Why? Well, he liked Daniel. Everybody looked at Daniel with favor, except for those who were jealous of him. And so the king is mad at this point because he was tricked. 2 of his top 3 right-hand guys totally deceived him. So he feels very, very betrayed in this moment. And he tries to get out of it, but he can't do it because he's given his word. And so he doesn't eat. He doesn't receive any entertainment. He's devastated. He goes to his palace and he fasts for Daniel, who was put in the lion's den. And here comes the third truth I want to present to you this morning. The first was, God lifts you up, expect someone to try to bring you back down. The second was, prayer will give you strength. The third is this, when you do right by God, you can trust Him with the results. When you do right by God, you can trust Him with the results. Daniel didn't know if he was going to go in the lion's den and be safe. You see, we have the benefit of being able to read this story, and we know the end, right? But Daniel in that moment didn't. He could have very well thought, well, this is it. This is where I die. Great. Lion food. That's fantastic. That's how it's going to end? Good grief. But in that moment, he did what was right in the sight of God. And we covered this last week in our fiery furnace story. Even if God doesn't save us, we won't bow. And so Daniel in this moment said, you know what, I'm committed to a prayer relationship with God, the only God. And so I'm not going to stop praying to Him. I'm not going to pray to you, O King. I enjoy serving you, King. I think you're a great dude, Your Majesty. But you're not worthy of me praying to. Only God is. And so the power of God shows up and saves Daniel just like he saved Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I love this next little bit of story. Verse 19. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. Verse 20. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? And we'll stop there for just a second. I love that part, whom you serve continually. That's Daniel's testimony right there. His life was an example to the king. And so King Darius knew that Daniel served God continually, no matter what the cost. That is so awesome. And I wonder if people think that way about you and I. You know, we were here for Bill Moore's funeral yesterday, and his testimony was on full display. People talked about his relationship with God and how he helped them in their relationships with God. And it was phenomenal. And I hope that someday somebody looks at me when my funeral comes up about and says, you know what? He served God continually. I want that to be my testimony one day. We should all want that to be our testimony. Verse 21, Daniel answered, may the king live forever. Verse 22, my God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. Verse 23, the king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. Wow. Never be afraid to stand up for God. Because when you do, He notices. God notices that. God is watching to see if we have enough faith to put Him first in a world that is often hostile to that. Jesus talks about this in Matthew chapter 10. He says, whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. Wow. So some of you, I hope that you feel conviction in your heart right now. Because we need to set aside time to seek God, to really seek after Him, to really develop our relationship with Him. I've said this a million times, but your relationship with God is just like any other physical relationship that you have on this earth. If you want to have a relationship with someone, you have to talk to them. Silent relationships don't work. That's not a relationship at all. You're just next to each other. And so we have to talk to each other to develop relationship with each other. It's the same way with God. We have to talk with Him and listen as well. Sometimes, boy, we just talk at Him and we don't stop to listen. We have to stop to listen to Him as well. We have to make Him a priority in our life, to intimately search for Him. Because when you do what is right, you can trust God with the results. And so that is my question to you this morning. And I'm done. But my question to you is, will you do that today? Will you do that? Will you set aside time to further your relationship with God? Will you do that? Will you seek Him with everything? Will you put your trust in Him? And will you continue to develop that faith that becomes unshakable in the face of many types of trials and tribulations? And I'm telling you, the only way you're going to do it is by having a relationship with Him. By simply knowing Him more. When Joey and I were dating, it was this time, this effort put forth to spend time with each other. We used to drive 45 minutes one way just to hang out with each other, because she was still living in Florence, Kentucky at the time, and I was up in Hamilton, and 45-minute drive. And we would do that like every day. She'd be like, well, I'm coming up there tonight. Okay. Well, I'm coming down there tomorrow. Okay. And shifting work schedules around and so on and so forth, just so we could be together. Just so we could sit and talk. God wants the same thing. He wants us to commit to Him and put forth this effort to spend time with Him. Because He wants that. He wants that from us. He wants to spend time with us. He wants to be known by us. And the only way we're going to do that is to spend time with Him. And so you're like, well, why are you saying that? Here's what we're going to do. Tonight at 5 o'clock, instead of a typical Bible study like we usually have on Sunday nights, we're going to have a time of prayer. And what we're going to do is we're going to meet here in this sanctuary. I'll put some soft, fluffy music on in the sound booth, and we'll have something playing, just something happy and Jesus-y and wonderful. And I know, I love that adjective, Jesus-y. Anyway, it's Jesus-y. But we're going to come in here and we're going to pray. And what we're going to do is I'm going to have sheets of paper all over this altar. And when you come in, I want you to write prayer requests on those sheets of paper. And what we're going to do is after you've written yours down, you put it on the stage. And when other people come in, we're going to come up, we're going to put ours to the pile, and then we're going to take one. And we're going to wander around this sanctuary. If you're a pacing prayer, I like to pace while I pray. I don't know, I'm weird that way. I like to walk around while I'm praying to God. And so, or if you just want to kneel and hit a pew, or if you want to just pull up a piece of carpet and soak it in tears, whatever it is that you got to do, however it is that you seek God. But we're going to pray for each other's stuff, the things that are weighing on us. And we're going to seek God in prayer. And we're going to do it for an hour. 1 hour, from 5 to 6. That's it. And then we'll circle up together and we'll lift up all those needs again. And that'll be it. But we're going to take time to seek God in prayer. And so I challenge you tonight. If you don't have anything going on, look, it ain't even regular season football yet, so don't make the excuse that some football game, these are meaningless games, okay? The stadiums don't even sell out for this garbage, all right? And the starters don't even play but a quarter. So look, you're not missing nothing. But make an effort to place God at a point of priority in your life. I would love for nothing else than to see every one of your faces here tonight. Because I know y'all got needs. I know. We talk about them all the time. We pray for them. We address them in Sunday school. We address them Wednesday night. We address these needs on a regular basis. So I know we have needs. I have needs. And so let's gather and let's pray for those things. And listen, here's the deal. And I'm going to wrap up and be done. But here's what I want to do. If you're in here right now and you're like, Pastor, I can't make it tonight. I can't. I already have some stuff scheduled and so on and so forth. It's not movable. I understand that. And I'm not condemning you for, not being here or whatever, so on and so forth. I understand our lives are busy. But if you can't, I want to pray for you now because you're already here. Isn't that wonderful? And so I want us to bow our heads for just a moment and close your eyes. And you're like, well, why do we do that? Just so you get alone with God, man. This is for you and Him right now. You're alone in a crowded room. Isn't that fabulous? Just close your eyes. Boom, you're alone. But listen, if you have a need this morning and you want prayer for that need, I want to pray for you. And again, we're gonna pray again tonight, and if I can remember your stuff, I'll write it down for you if you're not able to be here. But listen, I want to pray for you now. And so if there's anybody here that would like to seek after God for the next couple minutes, we can do that. We're free. And we have the opportunity. We can address the master of this entire universe, of all of this. We can address him. And we can say, God, I have these needs. Father, I have this thing that's weighing heavy on my heart and on my mind. Father, would you meet this need? Father, would you heal this hurt? Jesus, would you touch this life? We can do that. We have that opportunity right now. And so I challenge you to not let it pass you by. And so if you have a need, would you come this morning? And would you grab a piece of this altar? And would you seek after God today? Would you come? I'm not going to do a countdown. I'm not going to do any of that. But would you just stand on your feet and walk forward? That's all I'm asking. If you have a need, would you come?